Alex, it's the last episode of the season, officially, I think.
It's the last episode where we are reviewing games that have taken place
Yeah,
since our
well,
last
okay, so
episode.
yeah, maybe poor wording there. Listen, man, I just got back from high school football. That's the Friday thing lately. My brain is trying to process the fact that we won 26-21, and I don't know how we won 26-21. So
My
I
brain
figured today your brain
is shot after a couple days of transcribing too, which
yeah,
the
you
fruits of that labor at least is coming out very soon. But like it's
yes.
yeah.
Stay tuned for some pretty cool stuff Alex has bubbling up in his cauldron. Halloween reference like that. No, I figured today an easy way to go about this for today would be report cards. That's always the safe go to at the end of a season or at the end of something. So I want your Alex Stumpf, your 2023 report cards on the Pirates. I'm going to give you completely free range on how to break those down and how you want to split the report cards up. If you want to go full pitching staff or just the bullpen or starters, individuals, hitters, fielding, however you want to do this. But let's hear your thoughts on the 2023 Pittsburgh Pirates baseball season as far as grading out this baseball team.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta look at this more as groupings. I mean,
Oh,
single
you're
up.
not going to go through every single individual and give them a grade on their fielding, their hitting, their
Chris
pitching,
Owings,
their
I think, was probably about an F on this team. Now that he can reflect on it. No, yeah, but we just gotta look through different parts of this team. Uh, I guess there's no better place to start than the pitching for this
yeah.
starting rotation. By and large, I'm willing to give this. I'm giving the rotation a C.
That's
And
actually what I thought. Yeah, like that's
yeah,
what I like in my mind when you said this rotation. I was like, C.
yeah, because Mitch Keller was an all-star. The season stats are a little worse than you know what actually. He had that slump in the middle where he didn't
Yeah.
really have his cutter, and that was such an important pitch for him. So that kind of threw off
Yep.
his season stats as a whole. I think this was a. I think there's more still to be untapped here with Mitch Keller, even if it is just a little more consistency of being that top guy. But like as a front of the rotation starter, I don't think there's any objection there. I think Johan Oviedo really established himself as a major league starter going forward. Like he was one of the more pleasant surprises with this team. Injuries really hurt this group.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe this is a completely different thing if Vince Velasquez gets a full season, or if JT Brubaker gets to pitch into the air, or if you have a Mike Burrows to pull from. But I see some real positives. I also see regression from Romanzi Contreras. Quinn Priester really not living up to snuff. He looked better the second time up than he did the first, but really not, what he. Luis Ortiz also not really seemingly building all that much off of 2022. I mean, he did towards the end of the year, but for a lot of this year, it kind of felt like he was in a holding pattern for a bit. So I look at a couple guys who didn't take a step forward. I do see a couple guys who did take a step forward, and I'm going to try to avoid grading on a curve with a lot of this stuff. But I feel like the amount of injuries to the
I think
rotation,
it's
you
fair.
kind of
Yeah,
got to
it's
be a little
absolutely
lenient
fair with the
here.
pitching staff. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm
Let
going
me.
with a C, maybe leaning towards C plus actually.
Do you? I know this is speculation, and it's hard to give a real answer with this, but excuse me. If you do you think that minus an injury or two, this team makes a little bit more of a run at a playoff spot, or do you
No,
think that it's just pretty much this is what we could have expected?
I mean I think they could have added a couple more wins on it, but like they were what was it 8.5, 9 games out of a wild card whenever it was all said and done. Like they were a good
Yeah,
ways away.
yeah.
One or two pitchers doesn't swing 9 games.
No, no. I mean, I think it maybe makes the end of the season a little bit more interesting, but I think that's really about it. So, yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I'm not even going to add anything. I think C to C plus is pretty fair. I think it's a pretty realistic grade for this pitching staff, and um, I'm really excited to see Johan Oviedo next year. I want to see if Mitch Keller can take the next step, and also Quinn Priester, Luis Ortiz, guys you mentioned. I want to see if they can figure it out and be everyday arm, or not everyday arms, but once every, in those rotation guys
Yeah.
that you need. I'm excited to see what they have to bring to the table next season if they bounce back, or if if this Pirates team's going to have to look for new answers. Who you got next?
Since we talked bullpen last week, I'm going to keep this pretty short. The bullpen, I am actually going to give them a B minus because I think we're going to talk a little David Bednar in the second segment. I think he's really established himself as one of the top 5 relievers in this game. I look at like Carmen Majinski and Colin Holderman, who both broke out and are good leverage options for next year. Ryan Barecki was a pleasant surprise. Yeah, it needs to be deeper. Yeah, again, I'm kind of grading on a curve because there are just so many rookies with the group. But I kind of look at like this bullpen, and as frustrating as it could be, by and large, I feel like they did take a step as a unit. They need to add more to it, though. They can't just roll in with the same guys, in my opinion.
I man, B. What'd you say? B minus.
B minus. Very,
That's
very, very, very generous B minus.
that's high for me. But I trust your judgment more than mine, so I'll move them to a flat C. I was going to have them at a C minus, but I'll just put them at a C. I just, I guess this isn't fair because he's a part of the bullpen, but I almost separate Bednar from the rest of the bullpen because of what we know what he is. And I guess technically you can't do that. So I guess there's a gotcha, but just I didn't really see enough from the rest of the guys in that bullpen. Holderman, notwithstanding, there were times where Dari looked like he was going to be a gem, and then there were times that he looked like, oh, that's why nobody really wanted him. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to expect from this team next season in the bullpen. I don't know. Like you said, they can't be the same crew. It has to be. They've got to add. They've got to make. They've got to beef it up a bit. But I'll give them a C.
Yeah. I mean, just one closing thought. Speaking of someone who's been on the Colin Selby train for a while now, like he's the type of guy that you can't go into next year thinking, yeah, he's on the major league roster and he's going to get a leverage innings. It's like this is the guy you call up mid-season right now.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
I am going to. We'll do outfield next. We'll do outfield next. We're going to put catcher along with infield here in a minute, just for one giant one. But for the outfield, you look at Jack Sawinski, very inconsistent, but the overall body of work did trend up this year.
Is he the perfect example, like the perfect like poster boy for the 2023 Pittsburgh Pirates? Super inconsistent, but I think better than a lot of us thought.
Yeah, maybe.
When you look at the body of work.
He also went off in April, but I kind of thought, like, could this guy elevate himself to like an all-star this year? Which then may hit it. No, it didn't.
But we all thought, can this team be a playoff team in April too? And then it wasn't.
Yeah, it was what it was.
Yeah.
So I look at Sawinski. Reynolds didn't have this otherworldly year. He did at the first couple weeks of the season, but then had that long stretch of just not being all that great. I mean, he did find a swing. He did get into his legs as the year went on. Good signs. I mean, you have reason to believe he's going to be a big part of this 2024 team. That's why he got the 9-figure contract.
I think getting the contract out of the way now next year allows him to kind of, reset and get back to what he does best too.
Yeah. Right field was an adventure. Henry Davis was learning kind of on the fly while also learning catcher, and it just what an odd sequence of a year that was for him. Palacios, one of those guys that you watch him and you watch play, then you look at the Baseball Reference page, and it's like, is this the same guy? Is this the same guy? I mean, I kind of thought he had a bigger impact, really big clutch hits, had the flair for the dramatic. Overall, the group, I'm kind of leaning towards C minus because I kind of expected more from Reynolds. Sawinski took a step, but I feel like there was some meat left on the bone, like a good step potentially for more improvement in 2024. Right
Mhm.
field was an adventure. Maybe if the elbow wasn't so cranky, he could have played more. Maybe this goes up a bit, but just kind of where it is right now. It's just one of those you look at it like, yeah, I kind of get the feeling that for this team to be really successful going forward, it's going to have to be an infield first team probably
Yeah.
between whoever they have a catcher and Cruz and Hayes and whoever wins the second base competition. But like the outfield has these potential impact bats, and they just weren't consistently impacting this year.
Yeah, man, like it's tough for me because of like Sawinski. Like I don't know what to do with Sawinski's body of work because there have been times like
Yeah,
I think he has the potential to be an all-star. I do. I do think that it's in him.
we saw it this year for
Yeah,
long stretches, weeks, month.
yeah. It's almost like we've talked so much about Key Bryan finding his swing, and it's not that Sawinski needs to find his swing, but he needs to find the consistent swing. And man, if he can, there's your guy. There is your guy. There's a really solid complement to Brian Reynolds in that outfield. But I don't know what to do with it. So I'll go C plus on the outfield. I think that they. I think they slightly performed better than I expected them to, but it just was a very inconsistent season.
Yeah,
Because you could say the same for Reynolds this season too. I think when you look at Reynolds' body of work, it's a little disappointing, but it's not like he was bad. It's not like he was. I wanted to see more from him, but it wasn't like Reynolds was terrible. He just was kind of meh. Which honestly, this aside from April, this baseball team was kind of meh.
I think the last 2 months of change were encouraging too, but
Oh
the
yeah,
point
yeah,
the
yeah.
point stands. The point stands. Infield is probably going to be my hottest take here because I could not imagine going into the year being told that we would finally see maybe not the full Hayes offensive breakout, but like he finishes the year with an above average
Darn
OPS.
close, man. Darn close.
I mean, I don't think anyone's going to argue with this body of work offensively overall, even after the slow start. Just what he did from June on, really good stuff. I'm having a hard time believing that I'm giving this group a D for the year
A
because
D.
a D because I can't get over just how bad shortstop was for most of the year between Marcano and Castro and Alika Williams didn't hit worth a darn up here. Peguero's probably better suited off for second base. Second base was an adventure. Like Peguero is by far, in my opinion, the best out of these young infielders who got called up mid-season. But even then, like it was a below average OPS. We saw some tendencies for errors. Like you saw some good stuff to build for.
But if you're
First
all right,
base, one never. No, I'm finishing. I'm.
all right,
You're gonna let me finish.
I'm gonna hit the mute button on myself.
uh, uh, first base after Carlos Santana got traded was an absolute cycle of whatever. I mean, figuring through it, even Carlos Santana, one of their big free agent signings, didn't hit all that much. Like he was a really good defender, but below average hitter who gets traded for a very low, a very high risk prospect is the nicest way I think I could phrase that trade. Catcher. I mean, Endy did some really good stuff behind the plate, but on offense, like it was a rookie year. Stuff happens. Henry Davis didn't even really get to catch outside of like enough innings that I don't have one hand worth of innings. So I kind of just look at all this and it's like outside of Hayes and Triolo, who was really exciting from this group? Like if you want to squint, maybe you can say Peguero Rodriguez, and it is their rookie years, and I think they're going to have good major league careers going forward. But it's just like that's only a little bit. It's only a little bit.
Yeah.
So I look at this group as a whole, and outside of Hayes and Triolo, who really Triolo was only a couple weeks also with this. Like as great as his finish of the year was, it was only a couple weeks. Before then, he had like no slug before that. So like I can't give him like all these brownie points. He had a couple good weeks in September. I really only saw one guy on here that was a real impact player. And for a team that, like I said, needs to be infield heavy first with just the personnel that they have, that's not going to be good enough.
My rebuttal to this is you talked about injuries and grading on a curve because of injuries. The biggest injury on this baseball team happened at shortstop. And so, yeah, they're going to look disjointed at shortstop because I think they had – now, do you put this on the players? Do you put this on the organization? A little bit of both. But they put all of their eggs in one basket at shortstop with O'Neal Cruz. And none of the other guys really lived up to any kind of potential, So for me, knowing that O'Neal Cruz wasn't in the mix and they had to kind of shuffle things around, the organization didn't give them a real first baseman, and the only one that was close to that, Carlos Santana, they took him away. So I'm not going to be as harsh on them because I don't think that the organization set them up for success with what happened, how the season played out. So I'm going to give them a C. I know I'm taking middle of the road a lot here, but I think that that's what this baseball team was as a whole. And I think that I don't think that this infield was that bad, but again, they weren't enough to get it done. Aside from Ke'Bryan Hayes, they really weren't enough to get it done. But because of the injury to O'Neal Cruz, and Carlos Santana getting traded later, towards the deadline, I'm going to grade on a little bit of curve with them. So I'm going to be a little bit more generous than you.
Yeah, I mean, the D, I could say like all mine put together comes out to like a C or something, for like the final overall grade, which I think is kind of fair.
Yeah, C minus for this baseball team.
Yeah.
Now, but real quick, because I know we got to go to a break, but real quick, does the grade change when you take into account how they started?
I'm just looking at this strictly from 162 because I can't look at this. I wrote it in my last piece, for we take away April and divide the rest of the season into two halves. Second half of that, non-April season, they had the same winning percentage as the Marlins. The first half of that, post-April schedule, it was the Athletics. Like I got to look at this as a whole because I can't do the record gerrymandering anymore. It's over. It's over. This team won 76 games. The end.
A big part of that 76 games was David Bednar. I almost said Derek. Where the heck did that come from? David Bednar. When we come back from this break, I want to get your thoughts on the season that he put together. All right, Alex. David Bednar had 39 saves this season. That puts him second place in the NL and tied for second in the majors, or third place in the majors.
I thought he led the NL. Now you got me.
Wait, no, you're right. I shuffled. Yeah. You're right. He led the NL second place in the majors, tied for second with Doval from San Francisco. So I have a two-part question here. What do you make of this season? Because as you pointed out that I forgot pre-show, he did go an entire month without a save. But the whole team kind of fell apart during that month. So, what do you make of David Bednar's season in a vacuum just for the Pittsburgh Pirates? And then go. You answer that first, and I'll ask the second question after you answer that.
Yeah, just to clarify real fast, that month without a save, that was in May, whatever the Pirates were just absolutely awful. He didn't have like a
Yeah.
save opportunity, for a month, and he still
Right.
finished,
Right.
with the NL lead in saves. And I think that kind of tells you just how A, important this guy is whenever the Pirates are succeeding, and B, how good he is in those spots. Like this is one of the more dominant relief pitcher seasons we've seen in modern bullpen usage for the Pirates. And I think the big thing above all else is we saw him do it for a full year, because in 2021 and
Mhm.
2022 he had those second half injuries. It limited his innings output. We saw him go a whole year for the first time. And whenever I see something like that, I think the real takeaway is he's checked every box that you would want to see from a closer. When do you start talking extension? Because I feel like
Yeah.
it's this winter or never. Like if you don't have any sort of meaningful discussions about it, whenever you are already going to have to talk contract because of that arbitration, when are you going to? Last time I checked, there hadn't been any meaningful conversations, and that was back in July.
That's a
And they're not
perfect
going.
segue.
They weren't going to have any post July
Yeah.
anyway. So
That is a perfect segue to my second question. What is he worth to a playoff team? Because here, do you know how many of the top four uh, in saves, how many of the closers, top four in saves, how many of them are on playoff teams?
well, the fact that you're using four, not five, leads me to believe it's zero.
So, um, is it desperately important? I have my. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here. I don't, but is it desperately important for a playoff team to have a dominant closer?
Yeah, look at
You
what the
think so?
Phillies. Look at what the Phillies do with this bullpen. Phillies are low key, I think, like the sleeper in this whole National
Yeah.
League, and I am tempted to say that Phillies Brave series may as well just be the World Series. Like whoever comes out of that, I think is going to be
What,
hoisting a
how
trophy whenever this comes around.
electric was that grand slam the other night too, man? The
Oh yeah,
videos of it.
oh yeah. Like they took the
I hate to
Marlins.
give Philadelphia credit, but man,
Marlins. I mean, no, not the Marlins. The Phillies are definitely the type of team that's built for October baseball. Just the way that they are able to deploy a bullpen, and it's not just one guy. If you want to get into that, just to follow up with this one, look what happened to the Mariners whenever they traded Paul Sewell away.
yeah,
Well, the Mariners should be thankful that they are trying to win 54% of their games. It's you need a whole gaggle of guys, but you also need that stud at the end, and the Pirates have that stud in the end. And I brought up Majinski, I brought up Holderman, I brought up Brian Borecki, who, if we want to just strictly talk from left on left perspective, he did a really good job this past year. Like you have to pick his spots, but whenever you do, that's a really good body of work. So it's how do you build off for all this? And I think the best way to build off it is to make sure that you got a bedrock at the end. And look, I get that extending closers is usually not the best investment you can make because of just the injury history and the volatility of the position and the fungibility of the position. You can find
yeah.
a Ryan Borecki usually somewhere, but this is a team that if you're serious about competing, David Bednar is part of that.
I think yeah. So for me, just the reason why I asked the question is because it's been asked before. About extending relievers, especially closers. But for me, I think I'm in lockstep with you for this reason: the way the Pirates are built right now. One, they don't. Mitch Keller went what complete game once this season.
I think twice.
twice. Well, I know he went at least
What?
8.
Okay, he might have gone 8 a couple times, but yeah.
Regardless, they haven't had a lot of guys go very deep into games for a while now, right? They're just not. Their starting pitchers are not built for that. Very rarely do we see Pirates starting pitchers get into the 8th inning. So they're not built to not have a dominant closer if they're going to be a good baseball team. Maybe that will change later on down the line. But right now, as it currently stands, they're not built that way. And second, this isn't a situation where you've got Mark Melancon as your 8th inning guy and you can get rid of Hanrahan. Or was it the other way around?
Yeah, they got Melancon for Hanrahan.
Right.
They had Jason Grilly waiting in the 8th.
Grilly that's what it was. Grilly. Man, I got my guys mixed up. But regardless, you don't have a guy. I don't think Holderman is good as he's not the guy. He is not. So because you don't have that, I don't think you can afford to get rid of it. And then finally, the third point to all of this, with him being a Pittsburgh guy, with him being a hometown kid, this organization is in desperate need of a good PR move. They are in desperate need of something that's going to make people excited about this baseball team on the field. If they were to let him walk or get rid of him or just not extend him, the PR is going to be terrible, and they can't afford that right now. So I think when you take this whole body of work, they've got to get something done with this guy.
There are 3 years of art before he can walk. They aren't going to trade at any point. So but that's still going to be the count. That's really the only counter with it is just the fungibility of relievers and the inconsistency of it. And you've got 3 years of control anyway. Why are you trying to go through? But I stand by you. Take care of the players who have made an impact. He is a 2-time All-Star. He wants to be here. He loves Pittsburgh. This is his home. Why not just make it official? Why not just get rid of
that? That's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
If nothing else, for the optics of it.
The next trade deadline, you don't have his dad holding up his phone at 5:01 p.m. like, hey, we got through the trade deadline this year. And not having the heart to tell Mr. Bednar that, it could still be a trade. It might have just been filed through. So,
it was just to end this, I guess, bringing it home because he is a Pittsburgher. It would be so cool to see him close out the 9th inning in a playoff clinching game at PNC Park. I got to see. I was down on the field for when the Marlins clinched on Saturday, and I got to see Stallings and Josh Bell celebrate a playoff clincher at PNC Park. Now, they weren't Pirates, but they were still back at PNC Park. I would love, and I felt so happy for them. I would love to see Bednar and even Kutch again, and these guys get that opportunity to celebrate on that baseball field in front of these fans, because we know when playoff baseball does eventually, hopefully, roll around, we know what this city is going to bring. So, just kind of all of that to say, I really do hope Bednar gets that opportunity.
So while we're talking playoffs, whenever we come back, I'm putting Eddie on the spot for his World Series pick now that the wild card's behind us.
Oh, boy.
Eddie, I let the world know mine. I think it's the Phillies. I think they are just the type of team that's built for October. They're facing a damn good team in Atlanta. So I kind of view that as the World Series. Whoever wins that series is going to be the champion. So I'll give you a cop here of 2 teams that you think.
I think it's going to be Philly and Baltimore.
You still believe in Baltimore's pitching?
I do. I just think that Baltimore, they're the story. They're the young, exciting team. Partially I want to see it. I want to see that happen. I'm with you on Philly. I'm not really a vibes guy, but the vibes right now in Philly are pretty immaculate, and they are built for a long playoff run. Yeah, I think it's for me. I think it would be a lot of fun to see Philly and Baltimore in the finals in the World Series.
A lot of
Talking
fun.
the finals.
A lot of fun, says the Pittsburgher.
Hey, listen, man. Listen.
The
Let me.
equivalent of an
Listen.
Eagles-Ravens World Series.
Listen. I hold no ill will towards Philadelphia other than the Flyers. Okay,
That's fair.
I like the Eagles. One of my best friends, shout out Matt Casnow, who will be in Pittsburgh for the weekend, is a Philadelphia guy and is a huge Phillies fan, and I like seeing his team, I like seeing them win for him. Also, I love the 76ers. So, I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. And Baltimore, listen, yeah, they've got 2 Super Bowls, but when you beat up on a team the way the Steelers have historically beat up on the Ravens, it's not really a rivalry. It's just a beating up on your little brother. So you can't hate.
Who wins Sunday? Give me a score.
13-10 Steelers.
I'm gonna go 21-20 Steelers because there's absolutely no reason why they.
You think they're going to score 20 points?
Well, there's going to get a defensive touchdown along the way.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. So who's your all right? So you got the Phillies. Who's the who are they playing?
The Twins.
Ooh, I like that.
Sure, we'll go with the Twins.
I like the Twins. All right.
I'm sleeping so hard on the American League this year. This is an NL year. The best teams are the Braves and the Dodgers, and the Phillies are the team that's built for October, and the Diamondbacks are this great young, stupid, scrappy squad. And I just can't get into AL playoff baseball. It's just not nearly as exciting.
Hey, man, listen. I would be completely okay with seeing the Twins win, the Orioles win. I'm all for the new teams. I'm all for it. So, as long as they don't get a guy picked off on second base, I'm good with it.
That was a real bad one. All right, we're gonna say goodnight, Gracie, to Eddie. Eddie, good night, Gracie.
Good night, Alex.
Thank you all for listening. We'll talk again next week.